right, so for the second time, we're back. I'm not even going to hide that. It's the second time. Why hide the shame?
We got a blooper.
I stepped on the power cord. It was right beneath me, and the whole fucking mixer just shut down. We're like 14 minutes in, and I'm like, oh, fuck me.
He'll have a video. You can literally see us like,
yeah. Oh, it was good. We were building some momentum, but we have it recorded, so we do have that audio. Anyway,
yeah.
Let's run it back for anyone. Let's get a summary without the cat messing with me.
We didn't do this the first time too. We're doing a music episode. We're doing a music episode about
what kind of music?
About all kinds. But Bob has offered to make a music. Sorry, I got excited. Make an episode about my music. I make some music, kind of privately to myself. I mean, I put it out there, but which is dope. He surprised me with that. And you told me a really interesting story actually on the ride here.
I did. It was about the Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew was a group of studio musicians. They were all trained in classical music and jazz. They worked mainly for Capitol Records, but they also worked for Phil Spector. They worked for Brian Wilson. They worked for everybody. And again, my life is a lie moment. They are credited with being the musicians on 140 to 160 top 40 singles between the late 1950s and the mid 1970s.
Think about that for a minute.
Think about how many bands that is. I'll start rolling some off. Sonny and Cher, the Monkees, Mamas and the Papas. They didn't write, but they worked with the Beach Boys on Pet Sounds.
One of the most monumental, influential albums of all time.
They worked with Phil Spector, and that means that they worked with the end of the era Beatles, like White Album Beatles and stuff like that.
And the famous Wall of Sound that he was known for producing with.
They were the band that played the Byrds cover of Mr. Tambourine Man of Bob Dylan.
And
that is the one where I'm like, oh, my life is a lie.
Yeah.
Glenn Campbell was a member of the Wrecking Crew, and then he went out on his own. They worked with Captain and Tennille. And they worked with Ronnie and the Ronettes. So they didn't just work with like rock artists and pop like that. They worked across genres.
And what's interesting too, you say 150 plus hits. Realistically, that's going to be with 100 bands or more, right?
Like, yeah, they used to do 15-hour days in Capitol Records. You know that iconic like cylinder building in Hollywood, and that building has like 15 studios,
just zigzagging.
Yeah. And basically, they do 15-hour days, and they do this many hours working for this artist. Then they go somewhere else, work for another artist, and by the end of the year, they would have done hundreds, if not thousands, of songs. And for studio musicians, they were very well compensated during their time. They were probably making more money than the bands themselves.
Yeah, studio musicians, when you can put down fire and you can be consistent, it's money.
Yeah, and the biggest crime is that of the 15 members of the Wrecking Crew, not counting Glenn Campbell, because when he had a very successful solo career. Only 2 members are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's so tragic. Like
in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as studio musicians.
Yeah.
So it's like, why aren't all 15? Because there's a documentary on Amazon called The Wrecking Crew. Everyone should check that out.
And here's the thing: you would think that in some way or another they could have been kind of accredited as that group. Like
that's an unofficial name. Like they refer to themselves as like the unit, or they had like unofficial names.
But that's like the Matrix writing team.
In the business, they became known as the Wrecking Crew.
It's easier to have a branded name than to name you each individually. But what it told me too. It's interesting when you had told me. It's sort of like peeling back the curtain on Oz. You're like,
pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah. In other words, the bands are the big green head, and Oz behind the curtain is the Wrecking Crew.
And this is my frustration, and I know this group went out solo. I get that. But that's essentially what the band did.
Yeah.
And the band just went out and started recording their own music, and the phenomenal music, by the way.
Yeah.
Up on Cripple Creek, The Weight, The Night They Tore Old Dixie. I like that song. That's but my point is, like, if you ever watched The Last Waltz. Yeah, by Martin Scorsese. Did you know? Yeah. And that's basically was their farewell tour in the late 70s.
Yeah, okay.
Where all the artists they worked with came out and did songs with them.
Okay.
Like Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan and Van Morrison. This is people that, and we're talking about the band now. We're not talking about the Wrecking Crew. But anyway, the reason that they wound down in the mid 70s is because there was a movement towards singer-songwriters who wanted more control of their own music. And I know stereotypically, like I said, James, why am I blanking on his last name?
Taylor?
Yes, yeah. People like James Taylor, people like Henry Chapin? Chapin, Jim Croce, people like that. John Denver, who did in the early parts of his career have the Wrecking Crew as a backing band. But anyway, these people they wanted more of that control. They wanted to produce their records. They wanted to write all the songs, and they wanted some control over that. That for a 15-member group kind of goes out the window.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that led into, in my opinion, a natural progression in the 1980s. A lot of independent artists that the major record label said, fuck you too.
And it's also, once there becomes a point when they've done so well that they're going to cost way more too, just based on their talent. So I think it got to a point when studios were like, listen, we're making a different sound now. We're going for something different. We don't need 15 heads to write a pop song. We can do it with 3.
Mm-hmm. But the reason I got into that, and I know the power got cut off because I'm an asshole. But anyway, I was talking about how what did the indie bands in the 80s do? They created fanzines. They created their own record labels.
They built a movement.
They built a movement. And we talked about that in a previous episode. But what you were talking about was when we get to modern times with technology, and like, for example, we have SoundCloud. We had MySpace. MySpace was used for music, and it was wonderful. And Facebook and YouTube. We have all these avenues, and we have all this technology that is available to people to write their own music. And yet, why isn't there like a plethora of music that's like, at least on the mainstream, that's like
that quality
pushed? Yeah.
And that quality too. Yeah.
So why are we, in my opinion, why I'm like, hey, Rem, let's play your music? Because Rem writes it, he said, like you said, very personal music, just technically pretty much for himself. It's very cathartic.
Yeah. 100%.
But he does put it out on SoundCloud.
Which is, and let's just start with that. I gave Bob my SoundCloud to have the music so we could potentially talk about it at some point, but also like, I don't like telling people I have a SoundCloud because there is a certain image that goes along with SoundCloud people with like just cockboy rappers. All those cockboy rappers in like 2014, 2015, 2016 were spawned off that site.
Oh, wait, I'll do it, right?
Yeah. And
there, I just wrote a hit single.
Rainbow braids, fucking big old teeth, face tattoos. So for me,
what's tech?
Yeah, don't even say his name or you might summon him. He's like fucking Beetlejuice.
I will say the meme about him and someone like put him pointing.
Yeah.
But they put it to like Finding Waldo. And he's like, dude, he has no limits.
Yo, did you see the footage? No, you didn't. Did you see the footage of him getting stomped this week?
I did see this. I did see it. Yeah. I did see it.
That's what he gets for being a little
couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Little rap bitch.
Yeah. For a guy who used the scene until he got in trouble and then he sold the scene out.
Now anytime people are alone with him, they're like, yo, let's jaw this dude. Anyway,
let's fuck him up.
And and a lot of people associate SoundCloud, I think, like it's hip hop. I would say maybe
yes and no.
2 of my songs on here are hip hop, maybe, or rap or whatever the fuck you call them. But yeah, for me, I can feel trapped in myself, man, if I'm not drawing, writing, painting. And it sounds cliche, but so I've had these songs in me for so fucking long, and just certain songs, just in different fucking forms, and it was like, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years ago, I was like, I'm going to take a bunch of hallucinogens and record all these songs.
You heard it first right there. What is the inspiration for Remy?
Yeah. Well, for me, I needed to get it out. And I also know that, like, my dad got Alzheimer's and didn't remember shit at the end. And I'm getting older. So it's like, I wanted to have this stuff recorded.
Yeah.
I wanted to have it down. And also, like, on some real shit. Like, I think I recorded, if I did 20 CDs with about 15 tracks each.
That was before you realized you didn't want to pay $12.50 for a month for for the unlimited.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I still have it, but I'm not. I share like 15 songs on there. I rotate them. You know what I mean? But I realized it was more for me, and a big part of that too. People have to realize is, I don't listen back to the 200 hours or 20 hours, whatever the fuck it is, of music, and like it all. And I think that that's another thing that's really interesting because I listen to some of it. I'm like, this is fucking garbage.
All right. So why don't you pull it up and I'll just give us all the rundown. So basically what we're going to do is we are going to use his songs as like separators of segments. We're going to play a song. We're going to talk about it. That'll be the segment. The next song will come in. That'll separate the segments. We'll talk about that. We'll do that a few times.